Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei was taken by Shinto Pantheon and marry Koneko? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the DevilFunTime for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. Issei was walking through Kyoto, crying and trying to find someone to help him and his parents. He'd seen a monster, and his parents stayed behind to protect him, and he ran away. That's how we get to this scene. Young Issei kept running, and bumped into someone else, falling on his butt. He quickly stood up and bowed. I am sorry, sir. Can you come help me? Me and my parents are here on vacation, and I know this will sound crazy, but a monster just tried to attack us. It's Tsukuyomi. Don't worry, child, just show me the way, and I'll deal with the monster, the man said, indicating for the child to show him the way. Issei was still pretty scared, but the man in front of him felt safe. After a few minutes, they were at the place where the monster was still feasting upon his parents' dead bodies. Before Issei could panic, the man groaned. Damn it, I thought we made it so they couldn't get here after the last incident. The man then raised his hand and slashed downwards, and Issei noticed a glow and a green, intricate circle form over his hand. As his hand reached back to his side, the man sighed a bit, and the beast was cut in half, now dead. Sorry your parents died, kid. If we had made sure the city was secure, then this wouldn't have happened. Issei shook his head. Well, I don't exactly have a place to stay. Could I stay with you? Maybe you could teach me something. The man smirked. Okay, I think me and my siblings can teach you a little something. Issei was walking to school. There was only one thought rolling through his head as he ate some spicy cinnamon candies. Why did I have to be the one coming here? He knew why, but he still hated that he had to go to school. As he got to the school, he could hear all the comments the other students were making. Just think of the comments the other students are saying yourself. Anyways, while this was happening, he was observing his surroundings. Just then, barely detectable to his senses and senjutsu, came a familiar sensation. A yokai. More specifically, a nikomata. Interested, he followed his senses. Once he found the source, he wanted to them. It was an adorable girl with white hair and cute little hair clips. Hello there. I don't exactly know my way around here. Could you show me to the student council room? He asked with a gentle smile. The other girls around her swooned a bit from his smile, but he paid it no mind. The girl gave a little nod and began showing him the way. My name's Issei Hayadu. What's your name? The girl looked over at him. Koneko Tuja. Issei grinned. Well, Koneko, I've got a few questions. 1. Your aura seems off. Why would a nikomata have the aura of a devil overpowering their natural aura? Koneko froze before glaring at Issei, hoping to be intimidating. How do you know about that? Issei smirked. I'm pretty powerful myself, so I have my ways. Now, how about you answer the question? Koneko continued to glare at him. Why would I want to use a power that could turn me into a monster? Issei actually laughed when she said that. Wait, you think senjutsu can make someone a monster? Koneko continued to glare at him. Well, what would you know? Issei simply relaxed into a slightly more emotionless facade before pushing out his aura, focusing on her and adding a bit of senjutsu, just to amplify the fear in her aura. Considering I see that as a casual release of power, maybe you shouldn't be talking like you know everything. He then reined in his aura and let the mask slip back into the back of his mind. Anyways, let's get going. I don't want to be too late for class. Koneko, trying to hide her terror at the power he just shown, simply nodded. After a moment, she spoke again. It's because my sister went mad with power. I refused to use the power that drove the only family I had away. Issei sighed. You're a fool. Senjutsu can't make you go mad with power. Sure, it can get annoying to get used to, but it can't just make someone go mad. Amplify emotions, sure, but not go mad. She would have had reasoning to do whatever had her considered mad. Considering you're a devil, I'm assuming that she attacked a high-class devil, likely her master, and killed him. Even one completely new to it would be able to rein in their emotions before doing it, and if she was a master, she could probably be absorbing chi in the ring of violence for a bit before having to tap out due to the large number of extreme emotions. I'll look into it, okay? Koneko's eyes widened. Wait, so you mean that my sister didn't go mad? Then why did she leave me? Issei shrugged. Probably the same reasons my parents made me run away when we got attacked by a hell beast. To protect you. Koneko didn't expect him to have a response, but decided to simply say one thing. Please find out what happened, Issei grinned. Gladly. Now if you need me, I'll probably be eating my lunch in a tree. Have a good day. As he walked into the student council room, not feeling like knocking, he noticed that they were having a student council meeting. Hello there. I came to get my schedule and maybe a map of the place so I don't get lost. Just then, a lanky blonde boy stood up and glared at him a bit, but his aura held an immense amount of arrogance. Maybe you should try knocking next time, or I'll be knocking you out. Sona turned a glare on Saji, but Issei began to chuckle, confusing everyone. He then looked up with no emotion other than barely concealed rage and annoyance. Well, I didn't know that the devils here were so arrogant. I was told they'd be more kind than most that I've dealt with. I don't recommend proving me wrong. Saji, being a complete dumbass, decided to press. Or what? What could a little human do to a devil like me? Issei pointed at him. Bakudo #Sai. At that moment, Saji seemed to have his limbs all bound behind his back and held there painfully. He then saw Saji struggling against the spell. I don't recommend doing that. It could damage your soul if you aren't careful. He walked over to Sona's desk. Now, mind handing me my schedule and a map? Sona handed him the papers wearily. Once they were in his hands, he took off his mask, going back to smiling. Pleasure doing business with you. As he walked out, he snapped his fingers, undoing the spell on Saji. Hopefully the rest of you are less arrogant than him. I'd rather not have to fight too many devils. Now then, off to class with me. Once he left, everyone seemed to be a bit scared of the idea of him attacking them. If he could casually do that, what would it look like if he put effort into a fight? They really didn't want to find out. Time skip, he shows up in the classroom. Once the teacher called an Issei, he felt like showing off, so he opened the door and did a full hand spring into a double backflip before landing in the splits. Then he got up and bowed. Hello, my name is Issei Hayato. I hope we all get along. Many girls were swooning from his introduction. The teacher then spoke up. Any questions for the new kid? Many people raised their hands, but the teacher first called on Kates. How do we know you're not just some pervert trying to get in our pants? Issei rolled his eyes before responding. Yeah, I may be a bit of a perv, but most males have that perversion in them. I'm guessing you have some rather annoying ones here? She nodded, so he continued. Well, if you're asking if I'm gonna be a perv, maybe a bit, but I don't intend to do anything like peep or try to grope people without them asking. Kate sat down, only a bit satisfied with his answer. She'd see from experience if he was lying. The next question came from Aika Kiryu. So, 2 questions. Are you dating someone, and what's your favorite part of a woman? In order, I'm currently single, and I personally don't care too much, so personality. The final question came from Matsuda. Why don't you just go die, pretty boy? Issei chuckled a bit to himself. Trust me, I've tried. Still alive though, so screw you. Time skip to lunch. You can now see Issei climbing into a tree, holding his lunch with his teeth. Once he got to a comfortable perch, he sat back and chilled for a bit while he started eating. After about 5 minutes, he noticed a presence at the bottom of the tree. Looking down, he saw Koneko. He then smiled, gripped his lunch between his teeth and jumped down. Hey, glad you could make it. So, wanna talk? Koneko nodded and sat down next to the tree, and Issei took a seat beside her. So, what would you like to talk about? Koneko looked at him for a quick second before responding. So, how do you know so much about senjutsu? Issei sighed lightheartedly. Well, I have been training in it for a few years now. Koneko nodded, silently processing the info he just gave her. So, who taught you? Issei cracked his neck. The same one who taught me how to make illusions and use magic. You'll probably meet him sooner or later. Koneko gave another nod. You want to meet my master? Issei stood up, having quickly finished his meal. Sure. Mind if we go now? Koneko stood up herself. Let's go then. Time skipped to when they get to the ORC. Koneko was about to knock, but Issei held up a finger, telling her to wait without speaking a single word. Wanna play the part of a trickster real quick? Koneko thought for a second and was about to deny it, but then remembered that they keep stealing her sweets and try to limit the amount that she can buy. I'm in, Issei grinned sadistically. Alright, how good are you at acting dead? A few minutes later, Issei busted through the door, holding a bloodied Koneko in a bridal carry. Rias was about to admonish him for not knocking when she saw Koneko's state. What happened? Issei panted, trying to make it look like he ran the whole way here and was actually tired. I saw her like this on the ground. I was going to take her to the nurse, but she told me to take her here before passing out. Please help her. Rias had Issei set Koneko on the table and tried using healing magic on her, but it only seemed to make the injuries worse. Why won't it work? Maybe it's because I used reversal spell on her wounds. Koneko then looks at Rias. This is your fault. She then flopped over dead. As Rias collapsed into tears, both Issei and Koneko were laughing, though Koneko was only a slight chuckle. You just got pranked. Rias went wide-eyed. What? Issei recovered quickly enough. I used an illusion to create the wounds and Koneko really just had to act dead. That last line was entirely her. Issei said this with a proud smirk. Rias was about to launch some power of destruction at Issei, but he seemed completely unworried. She fired it in her anger, and Issei caught it. He caught the power of destruction. Rias couldn't believe what she just saw. How? Issei smirked. Dispel. The magic went away. Now then, as to how, it's because you're weak. Rias leveled a stern glare at Issei, but he was seemingly unaffected by it. He actually found it kinda cute. Ah, that's adorable. You think you're a threat, Rias responded, flaring out her aura as a challenge, doing a bit of damage to her immediate surroundings. I am a high-class devil. I am not weak. And Koneko, I'll be sure to punish you later. Issei frowned in annoyance before flaring out some of his aura as well, nearly flooring most people in the room. I'll be honest, I find people like you pathetic. They think a title is what gives them power. Training and hard work are what bring you power, not a title. I don't care if you're high class. I'll show you what real power looks like if you keep acting like the world revolves around you. Now then, the bell's gonna ring soon. See you later. Have a good day, Koneko. He smiled while saying that last part. Oh, and one last thing, hurt her and I'll make you deep-throat your own spine. Now, earlier, Issei's aura had scared Koneko a bit, but now, it just felt relaxing and safe, similar to when someone gives you a warm blanket on a chilly day, or, she realized with a small blush, someone who cares for you holding you to protect you from something dangerous. Time skipped to after he now rejects Rainier. Issei was taking a shortcut through the park to get to his house when he sensed and saw a barrier rise up around the park. He simply sighed and turned around, then his senses picked up on two entities, a fallen and Koneko. Issei prepared himself, just in case the fallen noticed his new friend. Come out, little crow. I promise that if you come out now, I'll only hurt you a bit. Rainier came out with her wings out and an arrogant smirk on her face. Ha! As if a lowly human could possibly hurt me. She then prepped a light spear and threw it at Issei. He simply yawned into one hand and used the other to catch the spear between two fingers. Hey, thanks for the toothpick, he said before using it to get a piece of broccoli from between his teeth and breaking the spear. That has been bothering me since lunch and I haven't gotten the chance to get it out. Rainier faltered at his actions. She then became enraged and prepared a more powerful light spear. Then, she heard a noise from the bushes and directed the light spear to that area. Issei's expression hardened to stone as he saw the spear begin coming closer to Koneko, who noticed too late to dodge. He then used a good bit of his speed and seemingly teleported in front of her. Boosted gear. Boost! He then punched the spear, shattering it instantly. And I was gonna have some mercy on you. Oh well. As he says this, he desummons the boosted gear and jumped up, grabbing her ankle and slamming her into the ground. He then lands and grips her wings. No worries, it's almost over. He then tore her wings from her back before crushing her skull under his foot, killing her. After that, he used a spell to clean himself off and let out a sigh of relief. He then went over and gave Koneko a little. You okay? Koneko nodded before asking one question. Did you actually just kill her? Yep. If it wasn't for you being here, I may have done much worse. Koneko nodded again. I can't even say it's my first time seeing someone getting killed. If you like making people suffer before killing them, you may get along with Akino though. Issei smiled lightly. Well, at least I'll have someone to compare ideas with. Besides, I want to get closer to you and your team. Anyways, wanna stay with me for a bit? I have a spare room, if you want it. Koneko blushed lightly. Rias may say she treats her peerage like a family, but she'd had to sleep out in the trees many times, more than she has on a bed, just because she slightly went against what Rias wants. This just happened to be one of those nights. Sounds good. Seeing as Rias kicked me out for the next month at least, do you mind if I move in? I want a more constant home. It's actually why I was out here. I was going to my usual place for when Rias doesn't let me sleep inside. Issei blinked for a second before he felt his emotions come through his aura more than usual, but did his best to control them. Wait, so her kicking you out is regular enough that you have a common place to go? Did she hurt you this time? Koneko shook her head. And no, she didn't, Issei sighed. Well, you can go ahead and move in. I'm just glad you're okay. He pat her on the back, but she flinched in pain. He was silent before looking at her. She actually hurt you, didn't she? Koneko looked a bit scared. Does this mean you don't want me in your home? Issei's eyes widened. What? No. I invited you to stay with me because I was worried, and I'm not gonna take that back just because you lied. Koneko's eyes widened a bit at that. Come on. I'll help you with any wounds you might still have. Koneko nodded and was about to try and walk with him, but almost collapsed until Issei caught her. Well, guess I'll be carrying you then. He then proceeded to pick her up piggyback style and walk to his house, making sure to burn away Reiner's remains before he left. Once they got back to the house, Issei set Koneko down on the couch. Okay, just so I can assess just how bad you're hurting, mind showing me your back? I'm gonna make sure it's nothing too bad. Koneko nodded before turning around and blushing a bit before pulling down her top. Issei was naturally aroused at first until he saw what had happened to her back. Holy crap, that does not look pleasant. Koneko became somewhat worried. How bad is it? Issei takes a deep breath. Well, it looks like a combination between a torn open area and the wounds caused by destruction magic. Wait, let me check something. Issei said this before using his senjutsu to feel her aura, sending her calmness and warmth. Then, he found it. A hole. That evil, annoying, self-centered, little bitch. Koneko became worried. What happened? Issei growled a bit. She removed the evil pieces and, if I had to guess, also removed your wings with her power of destruction. If it weren't for the fact that there would probably be a war between the devils and the Shinto Pantheon if I did so, I'd be killing her. As it stands, I intend to try and meet up with her parents and speak about this. It's against Gremry law to do such things to their peerage members. Koneko's eyes widened a bit at that statement. Wait, so she broke her own family's laws just because we pulled a little prank on her? That's so stupid, Issei chuckled. Well, she was stupid enough to try and hurt me. Koneko chuckled a bit, remembering the bit of strength he had shown in his killing of the fallen. Yeah, you are pretty powerful. Issei looked Koneko in the eyes and took a quick breath. Okay, I may have a way to heal your soul, but it would require that you embrace the side you've been neglecting for quite a while. This will heal your soul, but you'll have the usual lifespan of a yokai, so pretty long. Longer than a devil's if you become strong enough. So, do you want to take a leap of faith? Koneko seemed a bit scared to accept the offer. Could she really use the power that they told her drove her sister mad? Could she really bring herself to take that leap? Then, she thought about it for a moment. She'd always looked up to her sister, always wanted to be like her. Can you help me get stronger? Issei grinned. I can make it to where high-class devils look weak next to you. Koneko took a deep, steadying breath before she looked up at him as he held out a hand to her. I'll take your offer. She said this as she grabbed his hand and pulled herself up and towards him, letting her cat features show. So, when do we start? Naya. Issei blushed a bit, finding the little vocal tick and her general existence adorable. Well, if you still know how to convert other energies into your own, it'll make this a lot easier to start out with. Since I have a naturally powerful life force, I'll be using it to fill in the gaps in your own life force left by your former piece. It'll be far easier if you can help me convert it. Now, doing this will make you a bit stronger, but it will also make it to where it'll take a lot more power to use any reincarnation objects on you. Healing, sure, but not something like an evil piece. Honestly, the evil pieces more specifically due to the damage they already did to your existence. Issei caught himself. Sorry, sometimes I ramble when I'm nervous. Koneko giggled a little bit. It's okay. I've seen people with worse habits. Also, yes, I remember how to do that. She then processed what he just said. Wait, so you mean it's possible I could never be reincarnated like that again? Issei shrugged. I guess. You'll still have a soul, but you won't be able to become a devil after this. Koneko nodded her head. Okay, let's get to it. Issei nodded and grabbed her hand before pulling her over to his room. After we finish this, I'm making dinner. Anything you want in particular? And don't say sweets. Koneko had opened her mouth to respond, but shut it and just pouted at his last statement. Okay, how about rice, tuna and asparagus? Issei grinned. I can do that. Once they got back to the room and grabbed up some water bottles for after, they gave their last affirmations. So, ready for this? Yep. Then laid down and we can get started. Once Koneko was resting in a proper position, Issei began the process, directing her as he was doing so. Okay, you're going to feel a line of energy flowing into you. Take that line and try and fold it into your own life force, while adjusting the thread to be part of it. It'll probably be easier if you let out your ears and tail, by the way, and I'll try and make it a bit easier for you. Koneko nodded and closed her eyes before letting out her cat features and feeling for the thread, finding it quickly. She was actually pretty shocked when she felt it though. It was close to the feeling of her own life force. She began folding it in slowly, feeling around her soul and trying to fill in the area where her evil piece used to be. Out of curiosity more than anything else, she looked further down the string, trying to see the source. Then she saw just how much power he'd been holding back. Looking into his soul, she saw a massive landscape. There were rolling plains, towering mountains, flowing rivers, and so much natural beauty. Usually, a person's soul is an indication of their strength, and Issei's was massive enough that she could see that much from nothing but a glance. Issei chuckled, sounding a bit tired before coughing a little bit, Koneko feeling a warm, wet sensation of her face. It's not cum or spit. Get your mind out of the ing gutter. I see you decided to take a peek at my soul. I hope you enjoyed the view. Now can we get back to focusing on your healing? You slipped out for a second and I had to take over a lot of the work. Hopefully, this shouldn't take more minutes. After they finished, Koneko opened her eyes to see Issei stumble back and slide down the wall, a bit of blood in his lips and a good bit of sweat on his brow. Koneko then had a thought and reached up to the damp spot on her face. It was some of his blood. She became rather worried. Are you okay? Do you need anything? I'll try and help you how I can. She was about to try using a bit of senjutsu to try and help him, but he simply waved it off. I'll be fine. There was just a lot more energy in those little wounds in your soul than I expected. I'll be fine. Just hand me a water bottle and let me rest for a few minutes, then I can get started on dinner. She gave him a water bottle, but looked at him. We'll just get takeout tonight. You aren't doing well, and you need to rest. No trying to fight me on this, okay? Issei sighed. Fine, just hand me some water. Koneko handed him a water bottle before asking him a question. Hey, why were you affected like this? Issei rolled his eyes. Well, I was literally using some of my own life force to help heal your soul. Of course there'll be some negative affects. I was also having to alter the life force I was giving you to be pretty close to yours and draw in enough natural energy to keep my own soul from getting damaged before we even start mentioning the dark energy keeping those wounds in your soul that bad, healing your back and walking you through it. It got a bit tiring. Then, You kinda just dropped out to look at my soul and I had to do full alteration and folding in my life force on top of the other things I was already doing for about 5 minutes before you got back to helping me. Koneko looked down in shame. So it's partially my fault you're in this state? Issei's eyes widened. No, not really. I'd have been in a pretty bad state either way. I didn't expect just how much was missing either, so it's mostly my fault here. This didn't make Koneko feel too much better, but it at least helped a bit. Well, how about some Chinese food? Sound good? Issei nodded, and once they got the food and ate, they both had a simple thought. Who's gonna sleep where? Issei turned to her. You can have the bed. You've had a pretty bad day. Koneko shook her head. No, you healed me at the expense of your own health. You take the bed. Issei was about to rebuke before sighing. Okay, this'll get us nowhere. How about we both sleep on the bed? It's big enough for 2 or 3 people. Koneko was about to say yes, but then thought of a question. Why is it big enough for multiple people? Issei shrugged. One of my trainers refused to let me get anything smaller than a queen-size bed, so yeah. Koneko chuckled at the thought. I'll have to meet your trainers at some point. Anyways, sure. Be warned though, I have a habit of cuddling. Issei sighed in slight relief. Don't worry, I'm more than fine with cuddling. Koneko nodded. Good. Yeah, time skip. They wake up. As Issei began to stir, he heard a quiet snoring, almost like a purr, and could feel a small weight on his chest. Then, he remembered last night, and opened his eyes slowly, not wanting to be blinded by the sun. Once he looked down, he saw Koneko snuggling up against his chest. He smiled lightly before nudging Koneko, trying to wake her up. Come on, get up. We have to get to school. Koneko groaned and stretched a bit. 5 more minutes, Issei chuckled. If you get up, I'll get you a whole bag of sweets. Koneko was instantly awake, sitting up straight as a board. I'm awake. Issei smiled and sighed in a bit of joy. Once we both are ready and in our uniforms. By the way, you may want to put away your cat features. Koneko pouted lightly. No. Even with the evil pieces, it was uncomfortable to keep them away, and now they aren't even there and suppressing them. You'll just have to deal with it. Issei cracked his neck. Okay then. I'll simply put an illusion over you. You won't have to hide your ears or tail, and I'll even make it powerful enough to fool other supernatural beings, if you want. Koneko nodded. Yeah, go with full coverage. Issei then had a thought. Hey, so I noticed that all of her servants seem to have a good amount of power. Other than simple greed and lust for power, why did she have nothing but powerful servants? Koneko flinched. Well, she's been trying to get out of an arranged marriage. Apparently, there's a loophole that if she could beat him in a rating game, she wouldn't have to marry him. Issei nodded. Ah, I see. I'm technically supposed to help her out, seeing as Sirzex requested that we help out while negotiating for an alliance. Kaneko's eyes shot wide open with shock. Wait, you're supposed to help her? Then why did you basically threaten her? Issei giggled. Simple, I only have to get her out of the marriage, not be kind to her. Koneko was about to rebuke his claim, but couldn't really dispute it, so she just gave a simple response. Ah, that makes sense. Issei looked over. Well then, let's go ahead and get ready. It didn't take long for Koneko to be ready, but Issei seemed to be taking a bit longer, so she went to check on him, thinking that he may still not be feeling the best after the night before. Once she opened the door though, she saw Issei, standing shirtless. At first, she was blushing due to his muscles, but then paled, gasping in shock as she saw the scars that littered his body. Issei heard her gasp and turned to her, slipping on a shirt before opening the door. So, I'm guessing you may have a few questions? Koneko silently nodded. Well then, ask away, but don't take too long. I'm willing to bet Rias set it up so people believe you may have died and they couldn't find the body, so I don't exactly want either of us missing school. Koneko took a breath real quick before responding. Yeah, more than likely. Either that or erase their memory of me. Now then, how did you get those scars? Issei simply chuckled a bit. Training via putting my life on the line is bound to leave you somewhat injured, and all 3 of my trainers know just how effective that method of training is. Koneko nodded, remembering just how bad her sister would look sometimes after harder training sessions. It was rarely enough to leave scarring, though. Just who trained you? Issei rolled his shoulder before stretching his back, sighing in the slight pleasure you get when all of your joints just pop and your entire body just completely relaxes into a slightly gelatinous blob. My 3 trainers. Well, they never said I couldn't tell other people about them, so I'll just tell you. I was trained by Tsukuyami, Susanoo, and Amaterasu, Koneko gasped, eyes widening in shock at his statement. Wait, just how powerful are you? Issei shrugged. I'm at least strong enough to match up against my trainers one at a time without the boosted gear. I've gotten close to beating them, but have never quite been able to win. Koneko gasped in complete and utter shock. Issei had already been finishing up with putting on his uniform while they were speaking, so he bopped her on the nose, making a little boop sound as he did so. When he did that, though, Koneko could feel a certain type of energy surround her. There. Now you have that little illusion I mentioned earlier. Koneko nodded, kinda just trying to go with the flow. So, ready to go? Issei asked, already grabbing his bag. Koneko nodded. Sure, just let me grab a quick snack and pack myself a lunch. Issei grinned. Kinda already packed a lunch for you. Hope you don't mind. Koneko shrugged. Less stuff I have to do. I'll just grab a snack bar and we can be on our way. Time skipped to when they arrive at the school. As Issei and Koneko arrived, Issei sensed in his surroundings, sensing the use of memory alteration en masse. Issei looked over at Koneko. Looks like you were right. Memory alteration, Issei thought for a second before smirking. So, how about we mess with the other supernatural beings? Koneko took a second of her own before a small smirk crawled onto his face. What do you have in mind? Issei looked over before taking her hand in his. Simple. We make them hear about a new student and crash their party either during lunch or after school. Up to you, Koneko nodded. After school. Also, why did you grab my hand? I'm not complaining, just curious. Issei blushed a bit. Originally, I was going to ask you to act like we just started dating. Koneko processed this for a second before blushing a bit. If you want to do that plan, I'm okay with it. Nothing too intimate though. Issei chuckled a bit at her response. Well then, wanna be my girlfriend? Koneko smiled a small but bright smile. Sounds fun. Koneko was walking calmly next to Issei, holding his hand while they continued onwards. If she was being honest, she enjoyed just having someone to confide in if things get tough. She tried to do that with Rias, but she'd only kept saying how she and her problems were more important than Koneko anytime she tried to find someone she could just talk to with her. It was why she was usually silent. Not many people really tried to be that trusted individual. I want to skip ahead to after school when they go to the clubroom. If you want to know how she reacted to the lunch, it was basically Koneko took one bite before consuming all of hers without showing too much expression, and trying to steal Issei's, with Issei basically spending the rest of lunch playing keep away with Koneko and his lunch. As they both walked towards the clubroom, they could both sense all the remaining members of her peerage, but they could also sense a different presence. Issei turned to Koneko. Is that the bag I have to beat into unconsciousness? Koneko nodded, barely suppressing a laugh at his wording. Issei sighed. You're about to see how I usually enter when I get bored. Koneko was about to question him, but Issei was already running up to the building and jumped up, breaking through the window while using an illusion to give himself a black, military-style uniform. FBI, open up! Koneko couldn't actually stop her laughter this time, but everyone in the room, including the freshly teleported in Graia, was startled and about to attack. Graia actually launched an attack though. Issei wasn't too worried due to it just being a quick attack. Pitch, he then snaps his fingers, the snap emitting a frequency that resonates with the eyes just right to break it. Graia would have been shocked, but she only put a bit of her power into it, and she had been provided with the knowledge of who was gonna save her sister-in-law, including his appearance. She was able to easily suppress a smirk at the shocked and horrified expressions on Rias and her peerage's faces. She was kinda questioning where Koneko was, but would worry about it later. Riser seemed angry, but both Issei and Graia could see the fear behind his rage. Hello there, I'm Issei Hayadu. If you don't mind, I kinda wanna stop a little engagement. Graia looked at him, nodding slightly. And how do you wish to do so? Issei smirked. Me versus the overgrown, fried chicken, micro having bitch in front of me and his peerage. Gotta make it fair for the man with a so small, it's only dwarfed in sheer teeniness by the frailty of his ego. Rias growled while Koneko, who had been trying to enter, and most of Rias' peerage was on the ground barely able to breathe due to laughter. Rias snapped his fingers, summoning his peerage in a burst of flames. You think you can beat all 15 of my pieces by yourself and even face me? Don't make me laugh. He then points at Issei. Mira, show him his place. Mira charged Issei with her staff. Before it could hit, he was suddenly behind Rias, twirling the two broken halves of the girl's staff while whistling before Mira fell to the ground, many bones broken, her eyes glazed over and dozens of lacerations. Needless to say, she's unconscious. Man, your entire group is apparently pretty weak. As he said this, all the others collapsed, all of their limbs horribly mangled. I'm glad I held back, otherwise they'd be dead. He then took the two parts of the staff and stabbed them through his feet to pin him in place. Really, I expected better. Back with everyone else, they all were wondering what just happened to Rias and his entire peerage. Well, everyone, except for Koneko and Graia. Graia spoke up first. If you would not mind releasing them from your illusions, I would be most grateful, Issei sighed. Fine, but only if you can set it up so I can actually fight these bunch of idiots. Graia tapped into a bit of power technically available to any being, but only really useful in stronger ones, meaning that it's almost as useless as original series Sakura in Rias' hands. Almost. Nothing can be quite that useless. I hope. Moving on, Graia tapped into her own natural power and held out her left hand. Blue, intricate, flowing designs emitted from her outstretched limb. Do we have a deal? Issei smirked devilishly before copying her motion, his own arm glowing in faint brilliance as a similar, but fundamentally different design from Graia's comes from his own hand. A deal we do have. He then clutched her hand, both sides feeling the binding power of their newly formed contract. Similar to this, but still different designs, if that makes sense. Issei then snaps his fingers and the bunch of idiots are let out of the illusion he put them in. Now then, here are the coordinates of my home. Do be sure to contact me once the details have been set. Also, not to sound rude, but when you do so, would you mind knocking when you enter my house? It may seem old-fashioned, but I don't really take kindly to people randomly entering my home or room without warning. Graia nodded. I'll get sure to remember that. Now, this meeting shall be adjourned until their match has been decided. Any stakes you both with to put? Rias nodded, growling in anger. Yeah, if I win, I get to kill him, Issei smirked. If I win, Rias won't have to marry this prick. Also, since my life's on the line here, should I win, he'll be stripped of his title as high-class devil and will have his peerage taken from him. Do what you want with them after that. Graia nodded before responding. If that is all, we should all be taking our leave. Once the outsiders had all teleported away, Rias looked at Issei in shock. Did you just? But Issei cut her off. Put my life on the line? Yep. Rias began to tear up and was about to him, when he looked at her with a frosty stare. Now, don't think I don't know what you did last night. Koneko, come on out. I think they want to see you. Koneko revealed herself, kinda shocked they didn't notice her while she was laughing. Rias looked shocked and angry at the same time. How are you still alive, you little trickster? Issei decided to respond to that one. That would be because of me. Just so you know, I fully intend to speak with your family about your actions after I deal with Rias. Rias paled a bit before smirking. And why would they believe you over me, their own child? Issei shrugged. No real reason other than that I've been recording this since I entered the room. Rias was now horrified. Why, you have no other proof that I've done anything wrong. Considering that I could only heal Koneko's back so much, there is scarring on her back, and scarring from power of destruction is quite distinct. Rias growled out her next words. Well, maybe I'll simply kill you for trying to report me. Issei looked at her for a second before laughing. Not even trying to hold it back. Man, that's a good joke. What makes you think you could kill me? Rias smirked. You are only human. It shouldn't be too hard. Issei sighed in disappointment. And I'd heard that you were better than other devils. Issei then wiped his expression of all emotion. Rias was about to question what he was doing before she and her peerage were slammed into the ground. What did you do? Issei chuckled darkly. I simply made gravity 5 times stronger in this room. It's nothing that hard or impressive. Rias tried to stand, but couldn't seem to get up. Well, why hasn't Koneko fallen? She doesn't even have any devil left in her. Issei shook his head. Simple, I'm not letting it affect her. Before you ask, it's affecting me. I'm just that much stronger than you. Instead of this disheartening her, she grinned evilly. Well, maybe you should just die. She then launched a ball of POD at him, while Kiba managed to slowly get behind him, now attempting to stab him. Issei sighed in annoyance before grabbing the POD, using some senjutsu and a Tuki barrier to form it into a blade so he could cut Kiba's sword in half and made the sword go away. You were saying? Come on, Koneko, let's go. Maybe I can make that tuna I promised yesterday? Plus, Issei began to walk away, and Koneko followed him happily. Yes, please. As he was walking away, Issei snapped his fingers and reverted to his normal self while also undoing the gravity spell. All the members of the peerage were left shocked. The amount of power Issei held was astounding to them. One of them was more angry than in awe though. That one was Rias. As Issei was resting on the couch, waiting for Koneko to get done showering, he felt a magic circle form outside his house right before somebody knocked on his door. He went to answer the door, and there was Graia, standing outside his door. Good evening, Graia. Please do come in. Once they were both inside, Issei was already preparing some tea. I'm just making some tea. Would you like any while you're here? Graia nodded. A small cup will do fine. I won't be here too long. The match has been finalized. It'll happen in 1 week. I do hope that you are ready, Hayato. Issei was silent for a second before he brought Graia a small cup and poured her some tea. Well, at least it won't be too long of a wait. Now, is there any other business that we need to worry about, or are we done here? Graia took a sip of tea, giving an appreciative nod as her sensitive ears heard the shower turning off. Nothing too drastic, but a few things I wish to bring up. 1. I would like to thank you for helping my sister-in-law in her endeavor. 2nd, we are making progress on a peace treaty between us devils and the other 2 biblical factions, and would like the Shinto Pantheon to be part of the peace talks. 3rd, I noticed a member of Rias' peerage wasn't there. You wouldn't happen to know her whereabouts, would you? Issei popped his neck before responding. To the first thing, don't worry about it. It's basically just taking down an arrogant individual. 2nd, I'll have to talk to our leaders, but I'll probably still come as protection, just in case. For the 3rd question, I do know where she is, but she isn't in your sister's peerage anymore, and not even a devil at this point. Graia narrowed her eyes at his last statement. Oh? And how would you know that? Issei sighed a bit. Well, considering that I found her with a hole in her soul and wounds on her back the other day, which were pretty obviously created by a very specific power. If you want to see, just ask Koneko once she gets down here. She probably sensed that you're here. After a few minutes, Koneko had come downstairs in comfy clothing and with her cat features out. I'm guessing you may have some questions? Graia nodded. I do have a few questions. First off, is what he said true, and if so, how? 2nd question, could I see those scars he told me about? Koneko nodded before turning around and unbuttoning her flannel night top and pulling it down a bit, exposing her back. Graia almost gasped in shock as she saw the scarring on Koneko's back. She personally had some similar scarring, just in different spots. She then blushed a bit as she remembered how almost every time her and Surzex had, he would always play with her scars, treat them as just another sign of her beauty. She shook those thoughts out of her head, but made a mental note that these once she got back. She knew what those scars were from though. Did Rias? Issei and Koneko nodded. Koneko decided to speak first. She also removed the rook piece. Issei spoke up next. And I may have confronted her about it after you and Riser left. She didn't take too kindly to me wanting to bring this to her family. Graia nodded. I'll speak to Surzex and her parents about this. If you would like, I could try to set up a meeting with them for you. Issei smiled. That would be nice. If you don't mind, could it be after my fight with Riser? Graia's eyes widened slightly in shock. So you still plan to help her out of this? Issei grinned. Well, I never have been one to go back on my word. Now, unless you wish to stay for a bit longer, you can leave. Graia nodded. Then I will be on my way. Once Graia teleported away, Issei went back into his at-home mode. So ready for dinner? I only have to sear the tuna and it'll be ready. Koneko nodded, more than ready to eat. After a few more minutes, the food was all plated up. Bon appetit. Yeah, I kinda wanna get to the fight now. One thing, just for myself before that though. As Graia teleported back into her husband's office, she saw her husband finishing up the last sheet of paperwork he had for the day. Seeing this, she smiled a small but genuine smile, just as Sirzex looked up, giving a smile of his own in return. So, how did your meeting with the man the Shinto sent to help us go? Any info on Koneko? Graia thought for a second, thinking on how to mention this to her husband. She didn't want to hurt him by telling him that his sister acted in the way she did, but she also refused to lie to him. After only a few seconds, she made her decision. The meeting itself went well. He knew of Koneko's location too. She was actually living with him, from what I could tell. Apparently, Rias went a bit too far. Sirzex felt his eyes narrow a bit, already having some suspicions about it. Oh? And what do you mean, a bit too far? Graia simply sighed. Your little sister apparently removed the evil pieces forcefully, damaging Koneko's soul a bit. Hayato managed to save her, but couldn't get rid of the scarring from both the piece coming out and from Rias using her power of destruction to remove her wings. Apparently, it wasn't her first time kicking Koneko out to the streets. Sirzex sighed in a combination of slight disbelief, anger, and disappointment. He knew his wife well enough to know she wasn't one to lie. Okay, so I'm guessing this is gonna be brought to me and our parents, Graia nodded. Yes, but he did request that the meeting be after his fight with, as he described him, the overgrown fried chicken. Sirzex chuckled a bit at the nickname, smiling when he saw Graia smirk and let out a little laugh of her own. Well, as amusing as that is, we still have to do something about Rias. Graia smiled a bit. Well, we could think about that later, and you can come here and show me your love. Sirzex blushed a bit at that. Even after hundreds of years, his wife could still make him blush like a love-struck teenager, and still stayed with an idiot like himself. If he was being honest, he sometimes felt like the luckiest man alive. Well, Milikis has been wanting another sibling for a few months now. Issei was now sitting in his house, waiting for Graia to collect him for the game. He'd been training a bit more just in case. Then, he heard a knock on the door. It's unlocked. Graia walked in and nodded to Issei. If you are ready, I'll teleport you to the arena. Once the light of the teleportation circle died down, he saw he was in a replica of Ko Academy. Once the announcements had been made, Issei went out. He then decided to listen to some music while he slaughtered everyone, 'cause I could. He ran into 5 pawns in the woods on his way out. Die. As he said this, 3 of them were holding in their guts while the other 2 no longer had arms. They were promptly retired. Damn, I didn't even go beyond using a stick. Issei eventually got to the gym, seeing the remaining pawns and a rook. Maybe you guys will provide a challenge. The 2 chainsaw-wielding children came running at him. Issei then had a thought while dodging their attacks. Wait, how old are you two? They both responded in unison while smiling. We're almost. Issei's eyes widened. Does Riser do naughty things with even you two? They both blushed. Well, yes, he does. Why wouldn't he? We are his servants, Issei growled in anger. Out of curiosity, just how far does he go with you two? The twins seemed to pale a bit from his aura. Well, he'll usually stuck his thing in us. Issei then grabbed the chainsaws and broke them, using Tuki to make sure he didn't get injured. I'm truly sorry, and I hope your life improves after this. As he says this, he prepared and quickly knocks the twins out. He then turned to the other 2 in the room, glaring. And you would let this happen? The 2 remaining people in the room were a bit scared, seeing as those chainsaws were made to damage even a rook. We didn't have a choice. It was either let him do what he wanted, or he would punish us, said the rook. Issei narrowed his eyes. Then why not report him? I know for a fact that it's actually against, at the very least, his own family's rules. They both looked down in shame. Honestly, you're both pathetic. He then took the remaining pawn's staff, broke it in half and stabbed them both through the heart, easily retiring them. And now, Issei put on his serious face and turned off his music, set on a war path. He sensed around, finding the majority of the peerage were over in the courtyard. Once he got there, he got ready to kill all of them, pulling out a dagger and being ready to pull out his sword. Hello, soon-to-be dead people. They all turned to him in shock. What do you mean, dead people? It's not like you can kill us, one knight said arrogantly. Issei chuckled darkly, now behind the knight, a dagger to her throat. I can, and I fully intend to, bitch. He then slit her throat, which had her quickly retired. He then turned his sights on the other knight, trying to sneak up behind him. I see you. The only standing knight shivered in fear for her life. Issei quickly proved that fear rightly placed when he broke her hand to take her sword, and proceeded to cut off her arms, tripping her, and severing her spinal column, retiring her. Now with the sword in his hand, he walked over to the other knight. So, little bitch, why didn't you protect those little twins? She spat on the ground, trying not to cower. Because he would punish us for trying any time he found out, Issei growled in pure wrath. Well then, you're a coward! She tried to punch him, but Issei caught the fist, breaking her wrist and hand. Once he heard her let out a slight scream of pain, he stabbed her through the chest, letting her take the sword with her as she was retired. 3 down, 2 here to go. The unimportant bishop fired off a spell that she'd been charging for a bit at that point at him, hoping to maybe stop him. It basically did nothing but annoy him though. You call that a spell? He held up a hand. This is a small enough spell. Heido, Shikaho. As he shouted that, a red fireball, about the size of a large human head, fired at the unimportant bitch at immense speed, exploding upon contact. Proper art. Once he heard the confirmation of her retirement, he focused on Ravel. Now, why did you ignore Riser literally having with children? You seem to be part of his family, so why didn't you report the Ravel looked at her questioningly. What children? Issei got a bit annoyed. The twins with the chainsaws. They aren't even yet. Ravel's eyes widened. Wait, what? My brother told me they simply looked young, Issei sighed. Yeah, well, he lied. Ravel looked at Issei. I retire. She was then enveloped by a blue light. If you'll excuse me, I need to go report my brother. She then disappeared. Issei nodded, holding a bit more respect for her. Now then, on to the last 2 heirs. After he walked into the main courtyard again, he felt a spell form under him. Looking down, he saw it was an explosion spell. It then proceeded to blow up. The queen laughed maniacally, thinking she had taken down the human who was opposing them. She became confused though when there wasn't a confirmation of their victory. That's when she heard someone chuckling behind her. She turned around, and there was Issei, standing on a cloud. Man, that was a weak explosion. Seriously, I've felt more power behind a super soaker than that little spell of yours. As he said this, a single thought came to his head. No need for her to know it was used by the god of sea and storms. The queen growled before pointing her staff at him. Issei only smirked. Now tell me, why did you let those 2 little girls get ed by Riser? The queen gave a smirk of her own before responding. Well, they are his servants, so why shouldn't he do what he wants with them? Issei went back to completely emotionless with barely suppressed rage. Wrong answer. He then held up his arm, bracing his shoulder as he did so. Heido, Hiryu Gekizoku Shiten Reiho. Once he said these words, the queen was screwed. A massive beam of pure lightning and destruction tore its way towards her in nearly an instant. It would have retired her if she hadn't used the Phoenix Tear when the attack hit. Not bad. Guess you'll die instead of simply retiring. The queen's eyes widened at his proclamation. Wait, you can't kill me. It's against the rules. Issei popped his knuckles before he spoke. Well, it's not my fault if you can't survive without a head. Once he finished that sentence, he had already gone behind the queen and gripped her head, one of his feet on her shoulder for some additional leverage, and began to pull. The queen's pleas for mercy went unheard as Issei continued to pull, nearly getting to it when she managed to scream out, I retire. Unfortunately, that meant she survived. For now. Issei rolled his eyes before continuing on. Once he arrived, he saw a riser waiting for him. Hello, horrible person. You won't be as lucky as your queen, Riser smirked. Oh, and what can you do? You're nothing but a human, Issei stretched, feeling his back pop in just the right way. Ah, that felt good. Now then, as for what I can do, I can just destroy you if I want. Riser growled at his proclamation, but before he could form a retort, or even attack, Issei began to chant. Sleeping crest of turbidity. Arrogant vessel of lunacy. Boil forth and deny. Grow numb and flicker. Disrupt sleep. Crawling queen of iron. Eternally self-destructing doll of mud. Unite. Repulse. Fill with soil and know your own powerlessness. Heido, Kurohitsuji. As he finished this chant, a black box began to form itself. Riser seemed completely unworried, assuming his regeneration would do its job like always. Then he felt the gravity of it. He felt his bones bend and break under the strain, his regeneration trying and failing to reset his bones. No words could escape, only pained screams. This went for another minute, his flames of regeneration having already turned against him. Once Issei released the spell, Riser's regeneration had slowed down quite greatly. Surrender, or I do it again, Riser growled at him in anger. And why would I surrender? You're obviously bluffing, Issei smirked. He could do it again, but he was already bored. Am I though? Do you really want to take that risk? Riser tried to launch a fireball at Issei, but he couldn't build up enough magic to even create it, most of his reserves going to his regeneration. After a few more seconds, Riser lost consciousness due to both pain and low reserves. Once Issei's victory was declared, he was teleported back to the ORC, oddly enough. Rias tried to run up to him, both to him and possibly stab him in the gut, thinking that he'd be too tired after the match to stop her. That judgment was wrong, seeing as he sidestepped her charge and prepared something. Bakudo, Rikujikoro. After saying this, 6 beams of light struck through Rias' waist, paralyzing her for a bit. Wait, what is this? Issei smirked. Another spell in my very large arsenal. Now then, all I need to wait for is Graia to get back to me on the meeting with your family. Rias tried to move, but couldn't even activate her own magic. About 10 more minutes passed before Graia showed up. Issei ceased using his spell at the behest of Graia. Now if you, Koneko and Rias could please follow me, we can get to that meeting, Graia said, preparing a teleportation circle. Once they were all with her, Rias being somewhat hesitant, Graia teleported them to one of the many meeting rooms within the Gremory estate, going to her husband's side once they were there. Rias' father, as head of the family, decided to start the meeting. Now, if we're all here and ready, let us begin this meeting. Rias' mother spoke up next, letting off a bit of her power. Now, these are some serious accusations when it comes to our family. What proof do you have? Issei pulled out his magic recording of their first meeting with Riser. Well, I do have a recording of me confronting her about it, and her subsequent reaction. Other than that, you also have testimony from me and Koneko, who also has some interesting scars from it. I helped as best I could, but I'm guessing you know just how hard it is to fully heal from power of destruction, and there's also some scarring from the removal of the pieces. Which would you like to see first, Lady Gremory? Venelina thought for a second, only really giving a passing comment about just using her name. Then, she decided. Recording, then testimony and scars. Yeah, I'm just gonna do a time skip to after all the evidence has been given against her. Koneko was buttoning up her uniform top, having just finished her testimony, including showing her scars. Surzex was the first to speak. I must apologize on behalf of my sister. She was entirely in the wrong. Now, they all turned to Rias. Do you have any defense for yourself, Rias? Her mother said, almost no emotion seeping into her expression. Rias flinched at her tone. Well, clearly they're lying. Why would I ever do something like this to one of my wonderful servants? Issei decided to throw in his own 2 cents. Yeah, and who else in Ko can use power of destruction? Rias tried to sputter out a response, but Surzex was honestly at his limit. Enough, Rias! Rias was shocked into silence. Her brother had never yelled at her before. She had originally planned to use her brother-sister complex to get what she wanted out of this. That wouldn't happen though. Serzex was currently in full leadership mode, his aura reflecting that. While usually it was playful and slightly erratic, it was currently swirling around him, close to him, perfectly controlled. The man in front of her wasn't Serzex Gremory, her doting older brother. In front of her was Serzex Lucifer, the leader of the entire devil faction, and the super devil who survived against, and even pushed to a standstill, the son of the original Lucifer, said to be one of the most powerful beings to ever exist. If Issei was being honest, he was both shocked and not shocked. He knew that Serzex had to be pretty damn powerful, but he hadn't expected the full level of both power and control. Let's get on with the meeting, please. I think we're scaring Koneko a bit. He wasn't exactly wrong either. Koneko was extremely tense, hiding behind him due to the amount of power in the room. The adults noticed this and quickly lowered their auras. Sorry. Let's get this over with, seeing as Rias has no defense, Serzex said. Mother, father? Both parents sighed in defeat. We have a decision. Rias Gremory, you have been found guilty of all crimes brought against you. As punishment, you will be stripped of your title as both heiress of the Gremory clan, and as a high-class devil. Your peerage will be questioned to see if you ever did the similar things to them and will be free to do what they wish. They then let out a sigh. And, as a final 2 punishments, you will have your abilities with the power of destruction taken and most likely transferred to your cousin, and you will no longer be a part of the Gremory clan. This trial is dismissed. Rias was filled with at first sadness, but then anger. She got up and summoned as much power of destruction to her hand and threw it at Issei. Issei was about to intercept it when suddenly, the blast was completely removed from existence by Serzex's own POD, his aura flaring in anger. Rias, that is enough. You may have been my sister, but you broke our family's laws, and even went against devil law in general by attacking an ambassador of another faction. Do not go further, or I will personally remove you from existence. Are we clear? Rias looked down, refusing to respond. He wouldn't actually kill her, would he? She then made 2 fatal mistakes. 1. Trying to seduce Serzex while Graia was around. 2. She mentioned her plan. Oh, come on, big brother, if you let me kill him, I'll let you do whatever you want with my body. Graia actually snarled at that. Serzex was about to just respond with no, but was honestly too shocked by Graia's reaction to say anything. Suddenly, though, there were ice spikes through Rias' knees. So, you plan to seduce my husband in front of me? You really are foolish. You even mentioned your intent to try and kill Hayato, meaning I'd be more than a bit justified in killing you. Serzex get Graia from behind in that moment. Now, no need for that. Besides, you're all I'd ever need. He then leaned closer to her ear, whispering so only she could hear him. By the way, I forgot just how possessive you can be. It's really quite the turn on. Graia blushed a bit, calming down enough to not just instantly murder Rias. She went to whisper something in his ear, but Rias fired a blast of magic at them. Serzex easily caught it, removing it from existence within his grasp. He then stood at his full height and glared at Rias, flaring his aura to the point that the matter around him began to cease its continued existence. First you go and foolishly go against our family's laws, then go against the devil laws to further estrange yourself from your freedom and continued existence, and then going so far as to try and attack me and Graia? I was simply going to be merciful and only hurt you a bit, but now I will completely eradicate you in the most painful manner I can cause. 2 things. 1. This is Serzex partially going into his true form, if only for the voice. 2. If it wasn't already obvious, I don't like Rias, and she will likely be dead by the end of this chapter. Issei was putting a good bit of effort into making sure the aura that Serzex was emitting didn't hurt, or really affect Koneko. It was pretty draining, actually making him sweat a bit. Hey, Lord Lucifer. I think maybe you should calm down. You're scaring Koneko, and I don't think any of us want to see Graia jump you. Serzex was a bit confused at first before he realized that Koneko was still there. He took a deep breath, calming himself down as much as he could. Okay, moving on with the meeting. First, if you don't mind, Mother, we shall remove your power first, then we just have to sign some papers and you'll be done. After that, you will be killed. My judgment is final. Now, just to go ahead and rush it, she did try and attack them again. Her powers were taken, and she was stripped of her rank, title, peerage, and life. Issei was a bit tired and out of it. It had been 2 weeks since the trial had happened, and it had gone decently in his opinion, and Soma had been put in charge of the territory, Issei helping out when he could. The reason he seemed so out of it was that it was the anniversary of his parents' death. He honestly didn't want to do anything today, but he also didn't want to go and just shut down for the day. Making his decision, he went to school. An odd thing on the way there though was that he'd run into a blonde nun, who seemed a bit confused. He could sense the sacred gear in her, and could tell from her aura that she was at least somewhat trained when it came to the supernatural. He helped her find where she was going, placing a seal on her so he would be able to teleport to her if she was in danger. On a side note, Drake seemed to be waking up, but he knew he'd have to wait for a bit longer for Drake to be awake enough to talk. Other than that, it was a plain enough day to just zone out for the most part, so that was good, but some of his fellow students were being annoying. He then overheard the perverted duo planning to go peep on Koneko's gym class. His quick solution for this was to knock both unconscious and drag them both to the student council, reporting them, and submitting the audio he recorded of them planning it, hoping they'd get expelled. As he was walking out to the courtyard for lunch, Koneko following him with interlocked arms, he sensed 2 exorcists near the entrance. He went to greet them, hiding his hair and face as best he could. "Hello there, you two. What are you doing here, by the way?" The one with the larger thing on her back answered first. "That's of no importance to you. Now may you tell us when and where we can meet with Rias Gremory?" Issei chuckled. "Well, you'd have to go to the realm of the dead, seeing as she is no longer among the living. Also, seeing as you are technically in both Devil and Shinto territory, it's of some importance to me. Now, if you can come with me and be patient, I'll go get the current Devil in charge, and we can all have a meeting." They both nodded, following behind Issei and Koneko to the old school building, Issei contacting Sona and telling her what's going on, and that she should meet him in the old ORC's clubroom. Once they got there, it only took Sona, her peerage, and the remainder of Rias' peerage a few minutes to get there. Issei had already started on some tea for the guests, with it almost being ready by the time the devils showed up. "Just go ahead and sit. The tea is almost ready, so just get comfortable. Saji, if you do something stupid, Sona gave me permission to use Hado hashtag on you, so stay humble. You don't heal as fast as Riser, so it will probably just kill you." Saji stiffened, nodding as he remembered the state he put a high-class devil in with ease. Issei clapped not even a minute later, passing out cups before pouring tea for everyone. The one with the large weapon was about to reject the tea rather rudely, but Issei sent an aura-infused glare at her, shutting her up quickly. "Now that everyone has their tea, let's get to introductions. I'll go first." As he said this, he unhid his appearance. "My name is Issei Hayadu. I represent the Shinto faction, and will more than likely play the role of arbiter in this little meeting. If you aren't civil, I will make you be civil. I don't care if your factions are practically at war. I will personally stop you if you try acting like a spoiled little brat." Now, normally the people in the room weren't very easily scared, but Issei was smiling the whole time he said it, and was using senjutsu to enhance the fear within their auras. They all nodded, but the other exorcist seemed shocked. "Issei?" She then jumped, going in to try on him. Issei simply stepped out of the way, causing the girl to fall on her face. She then got up and started running her nose. "Ow, that hurt, Issei. Why would you do that to your old friend?" Issei narrowed his eyes. "How about you try introducing yourself?" The girl pouted beneath her hood before taking it off. "What, do you not recognize me?" Issei observed for a second before it clicked in his mind. Right as he was about to ask for confirmation, Issei felt the tug of the circle he gave to the blonde nun Asia. "Excuse me for a second, Irina, I just need to take care of something. Koneko, if anybody tries anything, just use this circle and I'll be back here right quick." He handed her a piece of paper, noting the wide smile on Irina's face and the smaller one on Koneko's before teleporting away. Once he teleported to Asia, he saw what her problem was. Okay. There's a lot of dead bodies here. Why did you call me if the threat was no longer here? Asia blushed in embarrassment. Well, they weren't too much of a threat. I'm just not good at hiding the bodies. Issei's expression went blank. So you can casually kill about, I think that's people, all of whom I assume are part of the supernatural. Asia nodded, and he continued. But you can hide the bodies. Asia looked at him with a pout. Well, in my defense, I can usually just leave after killing my enemies. Besides, usually I'm only having to hide like 5 of these guys. Issei sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Okay, I'll go ahead and help. Now then, let's get to it, and you can get to explaining just how powerful you are, and maybe you can come stay at my place, seeing as the church you were staying at appears to no longer have a roof or walls. Together, it didn't take too long to get rid of everything and be done with it, but he did get a shortened version of her backstory, seeing as they didn't have too much time on their hands. It only took about 5 minutes overall, and he offered to let her come with him to the meeting. She accepted, seeing as she didn't want to be at the scene of the crime. Back over to everyone else. Once Issei teleported back, he saw that a few of them seemed to be in a bad mood, but nothing seemed to have happened. Okay, since we're all here, let's get started. The first exorcist noticed Asia beside Issei though, unsheathing her sword. Are you Asia Argento? Asia seemed a bit hesitant, but answered. Yes, I am. The now revealed to be blue-haired girl held out her blade towards Asia. If you still believe in God, then you will let me strike you down where you stand so he may forgive you. Asia's expression blanked out as she pulled out a flintlock pistol and a short sword. I may still believe in that up above, but he gave up on me for following his teachings to help all those in need. He abandoned me, so why would I let you kill me? Zenovia snarled in anger, and was about to lunge at Asia, but an aura of domination flared out from Issei. That's enough. There will be no fighting here. Now state your business here before I show you just how dangerous an angry Red Dragon Emperor can be. Everyone was shocked into silence. They hadn't expected him to be like this, or for him to be who he was. Irina spoke up. Why would you hurt us, Issei? Aren't we old friends? Issei chuckled with a note of sadness. Old friends? A friend would at the least call and try and console a friend whose parents died. A friend would at least make the attempt to see their friend after basically the only people who had been there for him since the beginning were no longer alive. A friend would have shown up at their friend's parents' funeral. He took a deep breath before continuing. Don't make me laugh. You're the one who never even tried. I at least had the decency to try and call you when you were in the hospital after a training accident. Now then, let's get this meeting over with. Hey Sona, can me and Koneko leave early today? I still have something to do, and I don't think I can stay here for the rest of the day. Sona was silent, but nodded. Okay, I'll be sure to tell your teachers. Issei smiled sadly. Thanks, Sona, he said before erasing all emotion from his face and turning to Zenovia. Now, what are you here for? Zenovia coughed into her hand to release a bit of tension from her body before speaking. Well, 3 fragments of Excalibur were stolen, and we came to retrieve it. We simply wanted to tell the devils running this town to stay out of it. Issei shrugged. Well, I'm not a devil, so that doesn't apply to me. Also, to ask us not to do anything about a possible threat on our territory is genuinely stupid. Do you even know any possible culprits? Zenovia nodded. We still wish for you to stay out of it, even if you aren't a devil yourself. As for culprits, we believe that the one behind this is Kokabeel. Issei almost burst out laughing. Well, I'm still gonna help look for the You're stupid if you think you could take on Kokabeel. Unless you've mastered the use of Durandal, you are screwed against him. Zenovia's eyes widened in shock. How do you know about that? Issei chuckled. You have far more holy aura than your partner there, and it seems to be connected to a small, dimensional tear, commonly used as a sheath for Durandal after the real one was lost. Considering you actually need the sheath, you don't have enough mastery to take on Kokabeel. Zenovia, who still had out Excalibur Destruction, pointed it at Issei. Oh? You want to prove how weak I am? Issei simply popped his back. If you want to fight, sure. Kiba, no fighting. You clearly have no control over yourself at the moment. Kiba, who was about to jump into fight, was shocked. What? But, Issei turned to him. What has you so angry? If it's your past, don't let it control you. If it's someone, find them and confront them. What is it? Zenovia looked, and then, something clicked. He's the last survivor of the Holy Sword Project, Kiba growled. My anger is towards those damned swords. Issei sighed and smacked him upside the head. You're an idiot. Why be angry at the blade? It did nothing to you. The person who made the experiment, though. He then turned to Zenovia. Now, where was I? Oh yes, we can go outside if you want to fight. Once they were outside, Issei stretched a bit before the match. This will be a simple sparring session. By that, I mean go for knockout or fatal wounds. Zenovia seemed shocked. What? That's not a sparring match, that's a fight. Issei chuckled, snapping his fingers to create a barrier. What, scared? This is what I consider a sparring match. I'll even let you start. Zenovia narrowed her eyes before charging at him, holy energy flowing into her blade. She then swung at his side, hoping to end it quickly. Issei simply held out his hand and caught her blade, the power behind it shattering the ground behind him. If you've seen Bleach, think of the scene where Ichigo catches Aizen's sword. Zenovia's eyes widened in pure shock. How? That shouldn't be possible, Issei chuckled. As I said, too weak. Honestly, if that's your strongest, then you are screwed. Zenovia growled, but fear was obvious in her eyes. If she wasn't careful, she may actually die. My turn to show you a light blow. As Issei said this, he flashed behind her, sending 3 palm strikes to Zenovia. One to the kidney, causing a bit of blood to be spilled, one to her back, numbing her legs for a bit, and one to her shoulder while using the other hand to hold the arm in place, dislocating the shoulder. She then fell to the ground, her legs unable to support her weight. Issei rolled his own shoulder and quirked an eyebrow, genuinely confused. Come on, get up. I thought you wanted a spar, not a nap. Zenovia used her working arm to pull herself away from Issei. You're a monster, Issei chuckled a bit. Yeah, nothing new there. Just so you know, I was holding back. Drake's fully awake, so I can properly use the boosted gear if I want. Remember that, and think about talking to the people who could help you. I'll deal with Kokobile when the time comes, but grow stronger while you can. You didn't have to go to that extent, partner. I'm pretty sure simply doing that paralyzing blow would have been enough. Drake said, not too worried about it, but kinda just wanting to bring it up. With someone stubborn like that, I kinda did have to do that much, Issei stated, really caring who heard. Zenovia would be back to walking in about 2 minutes, and she should know how to relocate her shoulder. If not, then that's her own fault. Ready to go home, Koneko? Koneko nodded, standing up and grabbing hold of his hand. Home. Now, Issei nods, preparing a teleportation circle. Before he left, though, he turned to Kiba. Remember, it wasn't the sword that killed them. He then teleported away. Thanks for watching this video. You really enjoy this video. Like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow DevilFunTime for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.